So please welcome Kate Rose to the show. Welcome, Kate.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited and all the way from Clearwater, Florida.
Hmm.
But so here I find you listening just, one of those random, usually walk the dogs in the morning, or I do, and
Hmm.
I just kind of go on to a YouTube channel and like, oh, there's Kate Rose. And I've
Yeah.
actually interviewed another Kate Rose this last year, so it's funny.
That's
And I'm like,
awesome.
okay, where are we going to go with this? So then I'm
Hmm.
listening and everything that's going on in this right now in this world that we are living in. And I had been to Bashar in October in Sedona, and a few of us
Hmm.
girls went, and he was talking about the contact, and that was powerful, and the meditations we did, and all the things he channeled. And I know you love him too.
Yes.
Um, so I'm kind of in that space. So I know there's no coincidences when people come into my path, and I know that that's why you came into my path because I'm supposed to learn something from you. So having gone down your rabbit hole and understanding that really it's a recent thing, and I look at 2022 as a huge benchmark for most of all of us on this
Yeah,
planet.
I agree.
A lot of us have had these awakenings. I started my podcast, did not know why. I was told in my intuition something's telling me to do a podcast, and that was kind of the biggest joke of my family. Like, what are you thinking? But I just
Mhm.
knew that I just knew I was going to say yes to it, and I did. And here I am,
Mhm.
5 years into it, going
Wonderful.
on 5 years.
Mm.
So I want people to understand before we get into the magic that you've uncovered
Yeah.
is your life before you uncovered your magic, and
Mhm.
how you led up to that, and how you see it now as a buildup of to the gifts that you have, and the knowledge that you bring, and how you help others uncover their magic. I mean, you've helped me with without you knowing, understand this galactic heritage and this like connection, and how connected we are, and where we're at in this part of this of our
Mhm.
life, in this trajectory of that. It's amazing. So you excite
Yeah.
me, and I know my audience is going to be so excited. I sent that podcast to everybody in my that text that morning. So anyway,
Mhm.
take it away, Kate.
Yes. So, well, so if we're going, we'll say like way back when, um, my, I felt like my childhood I felt like it was pretty normal. My mom worked for the sheriff's office. She was retired in the Navy, or I'm sorry, the Army. She worked for the sheriff's office. She retired. A lot of my other family members were in the service. My uncle was in the Navy. My grandfather, he was in the Navy. My other grandfather was in the Marines. So I come from a big family of service, like military and service. My mom, even though she retired from the sheriff's office and everything, she was just like this ball of light. She had so much like joy and everything about her. And even when she was in the like boot camp academy, her nickname was Revlon because she always made sure she showed up with her makeup on. She had to have her lipstick on before boot camp. And
Cute.
she was just such a beautiful soul. And I remember growing up, my mom loved playing Native American music. Like like my house all the time. She was playing Native American music and she loved angels. My whole house was full of angels. I mean, I have like angels everywhere here now 'cause my mom passed like 4 years ago, but when I look back on it, I was like, my mom was in tune with something, and I never asked her what it was because I was asleep. And
Mhm.
I didn't care to kind of get to know my mother while she was still alive. It was the last year uh, when I had my awakening, she was alive for one more year, and I felt like she was almost hanging on to watch me
Oh,
change and evolve and grow. And it was a really beautiful experience. But I tell a lot of people that like to really get to know your parents in this lifetime, like before it's too late. It's really, really important. I don't have any regrets, but if I could turn back time, I would have loved to get to know my mom a little bit more and even just asked her like, hey mom, why do you love collecting angels? What is your
Hmm.
relationship with them? I didn't even bother to ask her that.
Huh.
And yet the whole house was
Wow.
filled with angel collection of everything. And I never asked her, still to this day.
Huh.
So it's been very interesting. And like both my parents and my dad is still alive, but I grew up, I was pretty much the parent, the adult in the household. My mom, we grew up in Broward County, which was dubbed the pain pill capital of the world. And so my mom had a hysterectomy when I was younger, and that's when Oxycontin came out. So from I would say when I was probably in middle school till I'm 37 now, so like 4 years ago when she passed, she was addicted to pain medication my
Huh.
whole life. And because of it, and it was just doctor's orders. So she was just saying, like, they would tell her if she had a headache, you have to take an oxy like every 4 hours.
Wow.
So, and then it started with oxys, and then she was prescribed Percocet, and then like Valium and morphine. And I
Oh
mean,
my gosh.
she was a zombie. And then her whole body started to fall apart. She had complete organ failure, almost every one of her organs, because she was on so much medication. And at that time, my dad didn't really want to be at home. So he was always at the bar. And I tell people like I feel like my dad is a good alcoholic because he's always very happy and everything, but he didn't want to be at home with my mom. So I had to deal with that. So growing up, like it took me a long time. It was probably 6 years ago. I had bought an RV and me and my friend were just hanging out. And then she goes, "How did you do it?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "You had a pretty messed up childhood, but you turned out fine. Like, how did you?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" Like, taking care of my parents and being young and, organizing the garage and doing landscaping when I was in middle school and just making the house look nice all the time. Like, I never thought about it. It was
Hmm.
that instinct that this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm here to take care of my family. And I never thought about that. But when I started bartending at 18, and that's when, the lifestyle of bartending and drinking all the time, like that really became my identity up until I got sober like 4 years ago. And I just, when I was younger, I had faith and I believed in God. And what was interesting was the second I started drinking, I no longer believed in God and I didn't have any more faith.
Huh.
And I tell people the first time I ever heard what I call divine truth was a few years ago, right before decided to give up drinking for good, because I felt the calling from spirit that like party time's over. It's time to like, step into my who I'm meant to be. And I read this thing that said alcohol is an Arabic word that translates to body eating spirit. And that's the translation of it. And that's why when you go to the liquor store, it's called beer, wine, and spirits. And the Arabics believe that within every bottle lies a spirit. And when you open that bottle, it's a transaction. So you're giving permission for that spirit to enter your body. You're giving permission for possession. And when I heard that, every cell in my body just like started vibrating. And I never experienced this before. So that's why that feeling was the marker of truth for me. When I heard that, when I was reading about it, I was like, this is true. Like everything about me was like, that is why, like, every time I drank too much. I had hundreds of blackouts and I thank God that I know I had an angel looking out for me all the time. And I put
Hmm.
myself in some dumb situations, but I can only blame myself for that. But it just got to the point where, you know, I had to wake up. I could no longer keep doing that, like living that lifestyle anymore. But whenever I would ask my friends, like, hey, what happened last night? They're like, how do you not remember? You were fine.
Right.
I was fully functioning, but that wasn't me. It was something
Right.
else. And
Wow.
so in my sober journey, I run a sober meetup group now. And I like to tell people about the body eating spirit and kind of like the true aspect of the entity possession because so many people, not that it's an excuse, but so many people when they consume alcohol or pretty much any drug for that matter, you are giving that spirit permission to take your body for a joyride. And that's why a lot of the times people will say, "Oh, you're not you when you drink, like you're someone else." And I was in a not so good relationship with someone right before I had my awakening. And he was so wonderful sober, but when he drank, I mean, he just turned into a not good person. And I dealt with that for about 3 years because I only focused on the good. And I was like,
Right.
oh, I can like brush off the bad stuff, but then it just started to get really bad. And so dealing with all this, like my parents with addiction, my addiction with alcohol and partying all the time and being in like finding kind of relationships that just weren't serving myself at all. Granted, they were very good teachers and lessons, it came to a point, and I remember I was living on top of this bar that I was working at on Fort Lauderdale Beach, and I was hungover again. And I was like laying in bed. My hangovers would last like 3 days. And I was just laying in bed, just sick and just feeling so gross. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, what are you doing? Like, you cannot do this anymore. Like, look at yourself. And because it was a nightly thing, it was almost for years. That drinking was part of the uniform anywhere you bartend, and especially in South Florida. So I started to hear the call to get sober. And I didn't listen right away because I ended up having to hit a car while I was drunk. It was a parked car. I didn't get a DUI or anything, thank goodness, because I guess whatever spirit was controlling me that time was able to talk out of a ticket for hitting a car.
Wow.
And I did not remember it. And that, when I woke up, I saw in my car, I had like a orange cone under my car. I had a dent on the side of my car. I woke up on an ex-boyfriend's couch. We weren't even together. And I asked him, I was like, how on earth did I get here? He goes,
Oh,
you showed up
geez.
at like midnight and you couldn't talk. You were just so drunk. You just passed out on the couch. And I looked in my car and I had the ticket from a cop and it said crash. And I don't remember anything. So for like a good month, I didn't know who I hit. I didn't know what I hit. I didn't know if I injured anybody. And that feeling of completely not being in control in that moment and not knowing if I hurt anyone because of my actions, that was the wake up call.
Huh.
That was what I needed to happen for me to start to transcend and find who I truly was. So that's what started my sober journey. I did a 3 month break immediately after that. And I discovered like non-alcoholic beer and being a bartender, like that was a savior for me. And I started going to kava bars. Kava bars are very popular here in Florida. So that really helped me as well get sober. And it went from like a 3 month break to another 3 month break. Then I did 5 months, 10 months. I tried doing a year. And then when I did the year, I was so close to reaching a year. I did 10 months sober. I had my awakening within that 10 months. It was during COVID. And I decided I wanted to experiment with alcohol again after having a spiritual awakening.
Oh, wow.
So I being 10 months sober and my awakening was beautiful. It was on ayahuasca. My shaman is incredible. And I was living in my RV at a state park on like 500 acres of land, pretty much by myself for like 6 months. And I was able to process my awakening in such a beautiful, like, to me, COVID was an incredible year for me.
Yeah.
I just
Yes.
I grew so much, and my awakening, the fact that the world was shut down and I was able to process things on my own and in such a beautiful atmosphere was truly incredible. And so I went from that to coming up to Tampa, visiting friends, and I was like, you know what? I wonder what drinking's going to be like after having a spiritual awakening. So I started drinking again for like 4 months. And what I tell people is trying to drink after an awakening, to me, it was equivalent to setting a church on fire. It was devastating for me. I went to a depression that I hadn't felt since I was younger, in which when I was probably 16, actually I think I was in high school, I got Baker acted because I hated being here. Like I felt like I didn't belong on Earth. I felt like
You
this
got
wasn't
what?
I got
Baker?
Baker acted. So I tried committing suicide when I was in high school.
What
And
did you
so
call it?
it's called Baker acted. So it's
Oh,
like a mental institution. So I went for it was just a week, but I was just like, I really struggled with a lot of depression when I was very young. I think when I was like in middle school, I was already on Zoloft, and then they put me on Wellbutrin, and I
oh,
just didn't
geez.
really feel like I just felt like such an outcast a lot of my life. And I was always very tall, so I'm like 5'10", 5'11", and I've been this height since I was like 14. So really struggled with my identity and my appearance and everything like that. And it just, yeah, when I started drinking again after having my awakening, I went back into a deep depression like that I hadn't felt since I was young. And I went to my shaman and I told him, I was like, I need help. And I did another ayahuasca ceremony. I did a combo session. I did a sweat lodge, and I started to feel good again. But it was within that 4 month period is when I heard of alcohol in the body eating spirit. And that's when I felt that divine truth, that the vibrating of every cell in my being. And I was like, that's it. Like it is entity possession. And I do not give permission to allow that to happen to me anymore. And I've been sober ever since. And
Wow.
it's been incredible how much I have ascended in such a short period of time. And I think a lot of that comes from sobriety. And because alcohol is designed as a weapon to keep humanity asleep. And that's why that it's everywhere. You look on every single billboard, it's all like, hey, buy this alcohol, buy this, buy this. And I mean, we're force fed it to believe that when we are 21 years old, the brain isn't even fully developed yet. When we are 21, like right in the prime of our brain development, start poisoning yourself with alcohol because that's what you're supposed to do. Like
Right.
that's how you're supposed to have fun. And it's all a lie. And realizing that and going on this journey, I I've just ascended so quickly, and the transformation of being that kind of like depressed bartender taking care of like the parents and just all this other stuff. I'm totally different now. And I know like plant medicine has been a big teacher for me. And a lot of people will look at plant medicine as, oh, you're just doing drugs and those are psychedelics and you're escaping reality and all that. They are incredible teachers. They are teacher plants, and God put them here for a reason. They are to bridge the gap between worlds. So I tell people, if people in my sober group, if a lot of them are struggling with addiction, I take them to an ayahuasca ceremony. I've helped a lot of people heal themselves from addiction because of this medicine. And psilocybin is also another very, very incredible teacher. I've had tremendous experiences on both. And my awakening came from ayahuasca. I felt the calling that I had to wake up. A customer of mine at the bar told me about ayahuasca. And I actually went to the Amazon. I was in Ecuador for about a week, and I met with the Shuar and the Quichua tribe, and I saw the plant medicine there. I didn't do a ceremony, but I learned about it. And when I saw how sacred ayahuasca was to these tribes, that they built these beautiful, elaborate huts for ceremony and the way they just cherished and honored it, I decided after that trip that I was ready to do a ceremony. And I woke up very quick. So it's been
But
for me a tremendous journey.
that I was listening to. So you did one back to back, and then you go explain it where you have the walk in or the soul shift,
Mhm.
because
So
that was the turning point, I feel
yes,
like.
so that was so my first ayahuasca experience was I did a back-to-back ceremony. And I tell people if you're struggling with addiction or trauma or anything and it's your first time, I highly recommend doing back-to-back ceremonies because the medicine, once you go the second night, the medicine is already in your system from the first night. So the second night is tends to be a little bit more intense. You go a little bit more deeper. So the second night is when I had my awakening, and my intention was to wake up. I knew it. Like I just, and I was atheist. I didn't believe in aliens. Like I thought maybe we were alone in the universe. But there was
Huh.
this calling from spirit that was like, you have to have a spiritual awakening. And I didn't really do any, I hardly read a book. I thought like the last book I read was Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe in the fourth grade. And now I have tons of
That's
bookshelves
funny.
of
I
books
read
now.
that one too.
Yeah.
But
So
when
it's
you
like,
say awakening at that stage of your growth or your evolution, do you know what
mhm.
awakening is meaning to you?
So when it happened, like I kind of started to like research the calling a little bit because my she's a very dear friend of mine and she would just come up to the bar, you know, once a week, whatever, but she was a trauma counselor and the plant medicine was very important for her. Like some people have no issues with alcohol whatsoever. I definitely was not one of them. But and so she was telling me about ayahuasca and everything. And so she kind of became my little guru. It was kind of like she was there on the opposite end of the bar for
Right,
we were supposed to have that
for
relationship.
sure.
And we are still like, you know, we still talk all the time and we message each other on each other's journey. And her mom accommodates her at the ayahuasca ceremonies. So I knew that there was that calling, and I grew up Catholic. I went to like CCD, like I did the whole church school thing. My family, we weren't really religious. We kind of just did it to like please my grandma.
Oh,
But so I had faith. And when I was younger, my mom said I would take the holy water and I would bless like her head and her mouth and her feet and her arms. And I did that almost every night. I would bless my mom with holy water as a child. And then once I started drinking, that kind of just went out the window. But once I started to play around with my sobriety and go on these breaks from drinking, it wasn't until doing those breaks that very quickly I started to kind of get faith again. I started to have like develop, like remember my belief systems from when I was younger. And, I started to kind of be curious about maybe God is real, or maybe because something was like cellularly happening to me just by those little breaks from drinking. I was immediately changing into a new person. So when I decided to do my first ceremony, it was probably a year after kind of doing these breaks. And then I felt like I was ready for a ceremony. And yeah, I went in full on with the intention to wake up. Because at that point, I started to understand what an awakening was and whatnot, but I didn't know what it was going to feel like or whatnot. So when I did those back-to-back ceremonies, it was the second night that I woke up. And I saw my mom, who was still alive at the time. I had my awakening, it was on Mother's Day. And I saw her like running through a field of flowers. She was happy, young, healthy. Everything glowed like a beautiful purple. And I felt so much love and peace that no human being can give to somebody else. And I was sitting there, I could not stop crying. And I was just sitting there and I'm like, this is very strange because I'm here on Earth. I can see everyone. I can see my shaman. I can see everyone like in their own ceremony, but I am in a different like reality. I am so peaceful right now. I feel so loved right now and all this stuff. And so after that ceremony is when I began to really dive deep on where is it that I went. And I continued to go to ceremony. And after this one particular day, I made the comment, we pass around the talking stick and everyone talks about their journey. It's my favorite part of the ceremony.
mhm.
And I made the comment, and it was just the comment like, oh man, I felt like I died last night. And not that I had a near death experience, but I was just really struggling. So it was just a form of expression. So I'm packing up my stuff, I'm heading to my car, and this older gentleman, this man was like probably in his 80s. He was the oldest man still I've done like 20 ceremonies, the oldest guy I've ever seen at a ceremony. So I'm like packing up in my car and I'm leaving, and he runs up to me and he's like, "Hey, hey, hey, you said you felt like you died. Like, what did you mean by that?" And I was like, "Oh, it was just like a figure of speech." And but he was really interested. He thought I had a near-death experience and he wanted to know about it. So I continued to tell him about my first like awakening on the medicine with seeing my mom running through a field of flowers and all this other stuff. And he told me, and I'm convinced this man was an angel
Mm-hmm.
because what he told me afterwards completely changed my life. And he told me about an author. He goes, "Do you know an author named Jürgen Zever?" And I was like, "No." He goes, "There's a book called How to Enjoy Life When You're Dead. It's called Vistas of Infinity, How to Enjoy Life When You're Dead." And he goes, "You should get that book." So I looked on Amazon when I was with him. I was like, "Is this the book you're talking about?" He's like, "Yes, get it." That was the first book I read since The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe in the fourth grade.
Oh my gosh.
So that book, that's when I felt that divine truth, the vibrating in the cells, when I felt, that message come about the alcohol in the body eating spirit. When I read that book, the whole entire time, my cells are vibrating. I'm like, holy cow,
Huh.
everything in this book, this is true. And it's all about like death and the afterlife. And I became so fascinated. I started ordering like another book and then another book and another book. I started volunteering for hospice, and I became a certified death doula. I became a certified life coach. And my whole world just, it went from this to like
Oh,
this.
cool.
And so now it's like I have so many books now, and doing these researches on like near death experiences is when people would talk about encountering like galactic beings in their near death experiences or being on board ships or whatnot. And when I started to learn about that, it reminded me of another experience I had on plant medicine. This was on psilocybin, where I was living in my RV at the state park. And so I had all this beautiful land by myself. And I decided to do a ceremony because I felt that spirit needed to talk to me. There was something I needed to learn. Because the thing with the medicine is once you start doing plant medicine for healing, it the first however many times, you're literally healing deep trauma. You're healing stuff that you didn't even know you needed to be healed.
Mm.
And then once you get a point where you've worked on yourself and you've healed enough, or you've worked through karma enough, then you can start receiving divine messages. So I got to the point where when I knew I was being called to a ceremony, it was because they needed to tell me something.
Mm.
But it, I needed I needed plant medicine as that medium because I still very much like being in control. And I didn't understand, like I wasn't really meditating at this point yet. Like I was still very new to my spiritual practices. So I needed that plant medicine to be my teacher and to guide me to these messages. So in this one ceremony that I did by myself, I found myself on board of a ship, and what happened was I I saw it was kind of like it was a masculine figure, and he was wearing like a dark brown robe, and there was like he was on a ship. There was a giant window that overlooked the universe, and there was like some beings behind me, but they didn't have like faces or anything. It was just energy. So I can't describe who they were. And this gentleman his hands were over a circular platform. And in the middle of this circular platform was where the holograms would pop out. And in this vision, a hologram of Earth popped out, and he's looking at it, and he is so sad. And at this point, I'm like a fly on the wall. I'm watching this scene unfold. So he's looking at this earth. I'm watching him look at the earth, and I feel so much sadness from him. And all of a sudden, like two people come together and then they rip each other apart. Another two holograms of people come together and they rip each other apart. And he's just watching this continue and continue. And the amount of sadness that he had for humanity, and just he realized like the human experiment wasn't working. And at first I thought it was God because I felt like this person had the power to end the human experiment. But after learning about galactic history, there's so many different galactic beings that are directly involved with the human experiment that any one of them could choose to kind of pull out whenever they want, so to speak. But I felt that I was going to cease to exist in this moment during this vision. And he started to turn his back on the earth. And then as he turned his back on the earth, I was like, no, 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 like, don't turn your back on us. I was like holding on to the ground outside. And I was like, I thought I was not going to exist anymore. It was very real. So, like, right before he turns his back on the earth, he catches like a glimpse of something in the corner of his eye. So he turns around and there's a dark room with just a small wooden table with a single candle. And the candle is just flickering like this. And he's like, he looks and he's like, oh, that's strange. She's like, so he walks over there and then he sees Mother Earth. She's pregnant with Earth in her belly, and she's in the fetal position and she's dying. And then I become her. And then so I'm in the fetal position and I'm dying. And then somebody comes over and brings me, like lifts my head up and brings me a cup of water. Another person comes over and they put a blanket over me. Another person comes over and they're feeding me bread. And he's looking as these line of people are lined up to help Mother Earth. And so then I become him. My consciousness enters him. And he decided that he was going to give humanity one more chance because he saw hope. And for me, like that was what hope is. And so he experienced hope. And so he decided to continue on being a part of this human experiment. Not that I think he was like the director of the experiment now that I know about the galactic history, so I feel like that was a walk in soul. I feel like that was me on
Hmm.
board that ship, and I was meant to have that vision and have that experience, and that I had a contract to for my higher self to come back down and just kind of like take charge and to
Wow.
get me to where I need to go. And I remember after that, I couldn't speak for about 30 minutes. I had to like train myself to talk again. And then once I was able to get my speech back, I remember I looked at myself in the mirror, knowing I was pretty much like a whole new person. And I just looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, let's do this. And then my
Hmm.
entire life changed. That's when I
Wow.
got sober. I started running these sober meetup groups. I had the calling to do CE5 alien contact work. I started volunteering for hospice, became the life coach, the death doula, like the whole me of being a bartender and everything, which was only a few months pretty much before this experience, like I changed after that. So
Oh,
if
gosh, I love the way you
yeah,
explained your story. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we got to get into this galactic
yes.
because it's so prominent right now in the
Hmm.
world, right? If I mean, unless you're living under a rock,
Hmm.
it's like that's it. We're here. When I was at
Yeah.
Bashar, he was like,
Yep.
within the next 5 years, the whole 2 days was about contact.
Yeah. Hmm.
And so then I'm listening to you and understanding it more. And I had a reading that in Sedona, and she's like, "You are an alien, and you have a chip back here, and you have like Wi-Fi thing. Like you're coming here to
Hmm.
get information." And so
Yep.
then
Hmm.
I'm listening to you talk about it and how we're all we're all a combination of we're a melting pot here in the
Yes.
earth of all
Hmm.
the galactic beings, and they're just people have. It's like we're at this time and explain it. So you take it from there because I'm just giving the summary of what I've learned from you. So you take it.
Yeah. So pretty much like we are a melting pot of all the different galactic beings. Like our history is completely false. Like everything we've ever been taught in like our history books and in our history books, they only go back so far. And
Right.
it's like they've purposely been hiding our true history. And now that the world is waking up, there's new discoveries in archaeology and our ancient history as far as our planetary history goes. Graham Hancock, he's been really going deep on his work, and he has his shows on Netflix. I think it's Ancient Apocalypse, and he is debunking all of the history that we have been told, all of the lies that we've been told about our ancient history. And so we're entering a time where all of this new awareness is coming online so rapidly. And I tell people, like, we are living in an age of misinformation. When I volunteered the Contact in the Desert 2 years ago, the last day of the conference, the news broke out that basically we are not alone. And everyone was like, holy cow, like they actually admitted it. The media admitted
Right.
it, and
Amazing.
everyone's topic changed the last day. It's like, oh, well, what's next? But I thought it was very interesting how they decided when the date that they chose, because if you think about it, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, AI started to take off. Like
Right.
it was probably within the last year and a half that AI really started to take off. So now, yes, they just released We're Not Alone in the Universe. But now, with like the New Jersey drones, there's so many different videos. You don't know what's real. You don't know what's
Right.
AI made. You don't know anything. So we are in a time where the first time in generations, we have to use our own discernment. We cannot rely on what we see anymore. We really have to find our own divine truth. And I find a lot of my divine truth in a lot of channelers. Bashar is incredible. Lee Harris with the Z's.
Yeah, he's been on the
There's
show.
I
Yeah.
I've been studying Lisa Royal Holt, her work, and that's where I started doing the galactic heritage readings. And it's like it's really important to follow your own inner compass, like our gut. That is where our inner compass is. Our heart is where our inner compass is. And it's really important at this time, as all of this disclosure comes out, that you really need to pick your battles. Like, are you really going to I call myself a truth conspiracy theorist, and I went like a whole year where I got really deep into like the cabal and the Illuminati and all that stuff, but it's so dark, and it really brings your vibration down, and you can get attracted to lower vibrational energies by focusing on the darkness. So it's really important during this time, as so much kind of evil and darkness is raised into the collective awareness, that it's important to pick your battles. Like, do you really want to focus on that? Or do you want to focus on your self-growth and your light? Yes, I think it's important to not be like ignorant of what's happening. Like, it's okay if you want to go down the rabbit hole for a day or two and then get back out, but to constantly stay stuck down there, it's not good for our souls. It's not good for our
Right.
vibration. And as all of this new awareness comes out, especially with these galactic beings that are here right now, there are tons of galactic beings that are within our atmosphere. There's hundreds and hundreds of ships that are just waiting, and they've been here this whole time. They've been here for thousands and thousands of years watching us. And why are they watching us? Because our DNA is a mixture of all of theirs. So all of their family is on Earth. So we are a collection of everything. If you've ever looked at like researched indigenous tribes on the planet, a lot of them they look very different. Their culture is extremely different, especially the ones that are very detached from our normal kind of way of life, that are very in the rainforest and hardly ever seen. A lot of them, especially like the Dogon tribe, they are directly connected to our star family. A lot of the Native Americans, they've always had that connection to the star family. And that's why, too, with the Native Americans, there was such a mass genocide amongst these people that had that sacred connection, because they didn't want that knowledge to come out. But now there's so much star wisdom coming here on Earth right now. And it's a really, really, really exciting time to be here. But I tell people, because with disclosure coming, and the governments, they've been up the govern our governments have been up to some stuff for a very, very, very long time. A lot of our governments are direct reptilians. They are negative beings that have been controlling this earth for thousands and thousands of years, and they haven't left. So they are very intelligent, they are very smart. They've had a long time to think about these plans that they're putting in place. Like the Simpsons cartoon. People are like, "Oh my,
Yeah.
Simpsons can predict the future." That's who do you think is writing those shows? They are telling us, and that's one of the rules in the universe. Like, they have to tell us what they're doing. They kind of have to tell us what their agenda is. So they mask it through our entertainment. And we're we're in a time where the light has won. The light's already won. We're going to be fine. But the darkness is going, they're not going to go down without a fight.
Right.
So it's really, we have to really pay attention to what the media is going to start saying about these negative or these our ET brothers and sisters, because I personally have a feeling that they're going to twist it around and that they're going to be, oh, they're these negative beings and, like stay away from them. I just started watching, I still watch a lot of like 3D TV because I
Right.
look at it from a higher perspective. I'm
Yeah, it's
like, okay,
fun.
I'm an alien and let's see how these humans are, making these shows. So I started watching Invasion, which that's on Apple TV. It's interesting, but the whole purpose of that show is like just like a lot of alien movies. There are these horrible beings, humanity's threatened, they're gonna kill everyone, like, so it's so brainwashed in our minds that that's what we're to expect, when in reality, that's what the government wants us to believe. But if you take a poll on a majority of the people in the world, almost everyone believes we're not alone. They believe
Right.
aliens exist. B, a lot of people believe in an afterlife. They believe in a heaven, so it's like the collective already has a pretty strong, healthy belief system, but they just haven't been able to fully express it yet. So now we are entering a time where we need to express those beliefs. We need to not be afraid to use our voice and say, yeah, I'm an alien. I know I had a walk-in experience and I'm here to help, humanity. And there's so many of us that are here, you being one too, where it's like this is what we look like. And we chose to have this experience. And there are negative beings that look just like this too. And to use that discernment, especially when you meet someone new or whatnot, it's like, do you want to allow this person, this vibration into your life? Do you want to allow this knowledge into your life? So as we continue this like ET contact work. That's really important right now. And it's fun to do. Just grab a couple friends, go outside and, just try to make contact, open up your heart. And that's how you make contact with your heart. Just open up, say, we're not afraid of you. We welcome you in for your assistance and just see what happens. It's a very fun time to be alive right now. And it's a very exciting time to be alive. And I also want to mention about timelines. Every decision you make, you jump a different timeline. So I choose to not watch the news. Like
Yeah, me either.
even though I run like an alien meetup group, we'll meet up and we'll talk about stuff that's going on in the world. And my members will be like, "Oh, did you hear about what the government said about this?" I'm like, "No." Like
Mhm.
I choose not to hear that narrative because I take it with a grain of salt. And I'm trusting what I know. I'm trusting the channelers that I love to listen to. I trust my own intuition. I trust the connection I have with my star family and the information I can get with them. And, it's like we have to build that relationship for ourselves because we are our own compass and we will be able to, our intuition will lead us in the right direction. We just have to allow it and we have to trust it.
Right. So when you look at Pleiadians, Octurians, you do readings to where you can
Mhm.
tell the person what where they came from.
Yes.
And
Hmm.
you're from
Octurus.
Arcturus.
Yes. But I must say, like, we have been everywhere. So our souls, 99% of us originate from Lyra or Lyra, however you want to call it. And so that Lyra was the first incarnational planet in our system. So all souls had to start at
Oh,
Lyra. And
okay.
so after that, they moved to Vega. Lyra became very masculine because they didn't have any other help in the universe. Like we have a lot of help out there. If like Earth needs help, we have a whole army of galactic beings at our side ready to assist us. The Lyrans, they had no one. They were basically alone in the universe, so they had to figure it out themselves. So we were them. So we lived in a time where we had no one to help us. And a lot of these past lifetimes carry onto this lifetime. So for those that think that they don't have enough support in this life, that, they're yeah, that they're just alone, that nobody cares about them or whatnot, chances are you're picking up an imprint from that past life in Lyra.
Hmm.
And so the Lyrans, they had to learn how to be a civilization. They had to learn to grow. So in the natural process of evolution comes polarity and conflict. I tell people our universe, we have a free will universe, but you cannot, it is physically impossible to get to the light without first going through the darkness. You have to go through polarization and conflict to get to the light. You can, a lot of spiritual masters or beings, they try to bypass that. They try to use a lot of what's called spiritual technology, tarot cards, dowsing rods, pendulums. Those are all extremely important tools, but sometimes they use it to an extent where just they want to ascend. They will meditate constantly. If they have a negative feeling about someone, they think something's wrong and whatnot. That stems from their lifetimes in Vega. So when Lyra decided to kind of branch off, some of the beings of Lyra decided that they wanted to branch off and they wanted a more feminine expression. They wanted to dive fully into their spirituality. So they broke off and started the Vegan constellation, the civilization. And so they were really deep in their spiritual practices and they became way too involved. So they ended up suppressing their feminine emotional side. And in their intense spiritual studies, they developed more of a masculine, dominant society. So think of religion, where religion is very like, oh, you can't do this, or a lot of monks, they are pretty much abstinent from a lot of things in life. So
Right.
that's where a lot of that strict stuff, it came from Vegan mysticism, and a lot of our religion and everything comes, our spiritual, our mystery teachings and everything, it's all Vegan mysticism. And the
Hmm.
Vegans actually had a spiritual school on Mars. So Mars was an incredible place where a lot of these galactic beings from all over the universe, they would come there and they would study. They would learn all these different teachings about God and, spirit and how to really kind of tune into that aspect of themselves. So Mars was actually an incredible school and it was very important, which is why it ended up getting destroyed later on in a lot of these galactic wars with like the Orions and the our history is so vast, but a lot of our history is still because we are the DNA of all of this history, a lot of the karma that we have in this lifetime, a lot of the trials and tribulations, a lot of the challenges that we have here is directly tied to these lifetimes. So when I do these readings, I you can choose, it's basically up to 7 galactic lifetimes. And I bring you through the history. I really go into depth of, what experiences you would have had on these planets during these lifetimes and what issues you're having in your life today that is directly tied from that. It's like we came here to grow, we came here to get rid of karma, and we came here to be a part of this incredible experience and transition that Earth is in today. But in order to really ascend into our full potential, we have to clear at least 51% of our karma. So what
Right.
has happened is that Earth, like the our incarnational period here, it's humans are incarnating at almost like too slow of a pace. Like where our souls are evolving too slowly. So we have to incarnate many, many, many lifetimes to learn one lesson. So they
Huh.
decided that the Earth experiment it's taking too long. Like these souls that are coming here that are choosing to come to like the toughest school in the universe, it's just people aren't really getting it. So what they've decided to do is they've decided to speed up the human experiment, to speed up the soul's evolution here. So they have allowed the opportunity for pretty much every soul that is incarnate now, the opportunity to incarnate with multiple karmic lessons to learn in one lifetime. So what could take 10 lifetimes, a lot of people are experiencing here now in one lifetime. That's why there's so much chaos in the world. That's
Wow.
so many people that are having such a hard time. Like you can look at your friend and you could be like, man, that girl just can't catch a break.
Right.
Like everything, like just one thing after another, something keeps happening to her. And,
Huh.
like I feel so bad. Like she can't, she chose that. She
Right.
chose to have that experience of hardship and trauma and trials and obstacles and all these things because these people, they're badass souls. They chose, they were like, you know what? I can handle it. Bring it on. And so they came here and their souls are growing at such a rapid pace. And what's happening is because the earth is transitioning so quickly as well, we have to kind of keep up with her. So that's why they're speeding up this process. So a lot more souls can kind of stay here and continue to incarnate if they choose here on Earth. But what's happening too in our galactic transition and the removal of the darkness from our planet is that for these souls that have constantly chosen darkness over and over and over, and they haven't allowed their souls to evolve and grow, that they are unfortunately they're going to cease to exist forever. Like after this
Oh, wow.
lifetime, after what is happening during this transition of removing the darkness, they decided that this experiment, it's gotten just way too dark. It's just gotten to the point where, a lot of these negative species are able to completely hijack and manipulate the experiment, and they've allowed it to continue because it's more of like curiosity, like what are the humans going to do with this virus in the system? Like how are they going to overcome it? How are they going to heal themselves from this virus? And so it's just gotten to the point where it's been too manipulated. And so that these beings that have completely wreaked havoc along our complete universe. I mean, they've ruined so many planets that they entrap them here on Earth for the purpose of they don't want them to ruin any more other planets.
Huh.
Because that they have been trapped here, it's like, we see the manipulation, we see how they want that control, and they're like, okay, well, if we're trapped here, we're going to make this our planet. And that's where like kind of the karma from the Orion Wars come in. A lot of those the beings that were from Orion that really they were the controllers and they suppressed the people and they made the people slaves and everything. A lot of them came to Earth and a lot of them are still here right now. Those are the really ancient ones that have been in control for a very long time. So it's a very real thing that's happening, but the good news is once again, the light has won. There's planets being created already for souls that choose to want to have a very low vibrational experience because even having those experiences, they're still important for the soul's growth. Because once again, you have to go through the darkness before you can go to the light. So having those incarnations where it's very hard and a lot of souls have to kind of recuperate after having certain lifetimes,
Mm-hmm.
they're essential. But so other planets are being created right now where these souls that just kind of keep choosing the darkness, not the really bad ones. The really bad ones are going to be eradicated forever. Their soul will cease to exist. And that's why they're holding on to so much control. They don't want to go down without a fight. But those that have kind of existed in the gray area where they haven't been able to kind of choose a side, they have other planets that are already being created to house those souls that want to have those experiences. Because Earth is now, we're entering the new earth. We're entering the earth that was made to house souls on a 5D, a very high vibrational level. Like we worked really hard. A lot of other galactic beings have worked really hard to make Earth what it is. And so the next few years, it's going to be, all the dirt, all the trash is going to be taken out, and then we'll be planting new seeds the next few years, and it's going to continue to grow. And Earth is going to be her beautiful kind of destination planet that she's always been entitled to be. And we're living in very exciting time.
Oh,
I'm very
Kate,
happy to be
you've
here.
blown my head off like that emoji, right? Where my head's exploding.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But I've listened to you a few times and everything you just said was all almost new. So
Yeah,
amazing.
okay.
But to
Um,
think that, you know, you're, five coming into 5 years of, this whole awakening and that what you're telling me right now, I haven't heard and people are going to be like, what the heck? But
yeah.
when I think of like the time when you talk about the timelines and 51% we have to be cleared. There's
Mhm.
so many things in order for us to have contact,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
So when you do your contact sessions on the beach, which I have looked at pictures and heard you talk
Mhm.
about, and you get the tin hat or you make hats
Yeah,
that,
we have the tinfoil hat making party.
yeah.
Mhm.
So is that an important, like you have to have an intention, you have to
Yep.
have you have to be explain, and why do you want to have contact, because you want to know that it's real, or you want to
So
have
I
that?
think I was guided to create the group because it was like that inner calling. It's like I knew I had to create the group. I didn't know why, just how you're calling with the podcast, but it's just like the nudging was like, you got to do it, you got to do it. And it's like, okay, okay, I hear you. So when I decided to create the group, it was within a week where I was like, should I create the group? Should I not create the group? And within this 1 week, so many random people told that I didn't even know just came up to me and started telling me about a contact experience. So I looked at that as a sign. I was like, all right, it happened so much on this like little week trip that I pulled over to a Wawa gas station and I started the group. I was like, all right, I'm going to create this meetup group. I don't know what I'm doing at all. I'm literally going to wing it this entire time. And I'm just going to be guided by spirit. And, whoever comes, they come. So now I have, I think, over like 500 members, and I've been
Oh,
doing
wow.
the CE5s once a month, every month for almost 3 years now. And I get a lot of new people out there. And I personally, I don't need to see a ship to know that they're real. Like I
Right.
have memories of being on one. So, and it's funny because I feel like all my members see stuff but me. So they'll be like, "Oh, Kate, did you see that?" And I'm like, "Look," I'm like, "Where?" They're like, "Oh, Kate, did you see that?" I'm like, "No." So it's like I mean, I've seen plenty of things, but it's interesting because I tell people a lot of the times contact can be made for just one person. So these people that are seeing these ships or these orbs or these shooting green or purple stars, like a lot that those experiences are meant for them. They're not meant for
Right.
me. They're meant for them. It was probably my second or third CE5. Some kid showed up. He was new to the group. He saw my event on the Nextdoor app. He showed up and
Oh, funny.
I'll put people in like a meditation. And then after the meditation, I ask if anyone had contact during meditation. A lot of times our contact is made in dream time. Almost
Yes.
90% of us have had contact in dream time.
Yes.
Contact a
I
lot.
do all the time. I
Yeah,
always am on a ship.
yes, a
I
lot of
can
contact and
describe them.
meditation. And that's a good point. Like if you are if you are having dreams of being on ships or with beings, or if you are having tremendous visuals during meditation, trust it. Trust it, trust it, trust it. You are not crazy. These are very real experiences. So when people like this one kid, we went through the meditation. I asked if anybody had an experience during meditation. A couple people raised their hands and they shared. Then he was like he was like so eager to share. He's like, so I'm new to the group. I found the group on the Nextdoor app and I'm open-minded, but I wasn't sure if I was a believer. And he goes, when everyone was in meditation, he's like, I kept my eyes open. And he's like, there was a hovering craft over the group. And he was like shaking and excited. His voice was like, yeah. And he was like, I came here a skeptic and I'm leaving a believer. He goes,
Huh.
thank you. He That experience that he had is what made me continue these CE5s every single month for like 3 years later.
Wow.
And I've I always try to do something a little different during them. Sharing, I'll have everyone like go around, share their name, if they have had any contact experiences, and just that alone, just creating a space for people to come together and be like, I have implants, I got abducted, I saw something at the end of my bed. These people are sharing things for the first time that they've never shared with anybody else because they thought they were going to be crazy. So
Right.
just alone creating that community, and I encourage anyone listening to this, don't be afraid to create your own community. I create mine on the Meetup app. It's an incredible platform. I tell everyone about it. Very easy to set up your own group on there, but just go out there and get a group of people. you can meditate. I've been guided to play Native American music when I'm out there, which a lot of people really enjoy, and just have fun. I was guided to try to start a dance party, so I bought like glow sticks and I bought kind of like rave lights, and I'm like, they want to see
Cute.
fun. And so this year, the last like 3 months, I haven't done a CE5 because of the hurricanes. The beaches have been closed. So I've been doing like craft nights. We had the tinfoil hat making party. We made UFOs out of paper plates. And then this Saturday, we're making our own alien t-shirts. So a lot of people love that. They love to have that community where, we're actually not the weird ones, like we're the ones that are aware and we understand the truth of our
Right.
cosmic existence. And it's beautiful. It's a very rewarding group. So
Oh.
I love my group.
Oh, I love that. So we're at the end, but where do you, how could you end it and say, like, by the end in this year, in this time frame, do you see it? Because when Bashar said it was in the next 5 years, he said it could be the next 2 months. I'm just giving you
Yeah.
and he gave a
Mhm.
visual of the spaceship over the water where they're going to come in as a threat, like not a threat. Like he's
Mhm.
trying to show you that it's going to get you. Like I think of when, the drones over,
Mhm.
um, it's like giving people like getting used to it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
how can you?
Absolutely. And I would say that I think for this year, and I'm just going based on my own intuition, and you made up a good point that Bashar said, oh, it could happen in the next 5 years or it could happen in the next 2 months. For anyone listening that are very reliant on listening to psychics or any channelers or anyone that gives a specific date, take that date with a grain of salt because there's a billion different timelines. Like Bashar says, every decision you make, you jump a different timeline. So if I'm a psychic and I'm saying we're going to have contact on January 13th, 2025, that could be true for me. I could walk outside my window or walk outside my door and see a ship come down and make contact with me. But that experience is true for me. That timeline was my timeline, not anyone else's. So really just take timelines that you hear, just take it with a grain of salt because the timelines are shifting all the time. That's why there's no clear date of when contact is going to happen. And it's happening so much already. If you go on like YouTube or even TikTok or some of these other platforms, people are posting videos all the time. But once again, you don't know what's real or not anymore. So that's when you watch something or you hear something, you have to use your discernment on is what I'm watching real or not. But I
Right.
think because a lot of this is happening right now, there's a lot of awareness. I posted like a TikTok video the other day and I'm like starting to get new to that platform, but I did like hashtag aliens and there was like 2.5 million people using that, like the hashtag.
Oh,
So
funny.
it's getting, the party's starting and
Right. For
it's
sure.
going to be people are excited about it. I get the general feeling that a majority of the population, we already know they exist. We already know that they are here to help us, and we already know the government doesn't have our best interest.
Right.
So everything that is on the news, people that like my dad watches the news every day, but even he'll be like, "Oh, honey, like he's even noticing
Yeah.
the that
Yeah.
he can't rely on it anymore." So now the news is just kind of like a big show. It's like a
Yeah.
joke.
Right.
But I would say that I think within the next year, I think we're going to experience I think a lot of people are going to experience other contact events. I think we're going to see even more videos uploaded online of weird things that people see in the sky or creatures or whatnot. And I think we're going to see a lot more different discoveries of new species of planets or new species of animals on the planet. Because as we're ascending, like we're already in the 4D, but as we ascend into the higher 4D and the 5D, these animals that have already been here the whole time. We haven't been able to see them because we're not in their vibration. We're going to start to see. So I expect that we're going to encounter some incredible new species that people
Oh,
are automatically going to think this is an alien species because they look so different. And I think that's going to be very exciting for a lot of people. I have a feeling that a lot of these new species that are going to start to show themselves is really going to help shape a lot of people's awareness of the world that we really live in. And they're going to realize, okay, this Earth, this world is not what we think it is. You know,
Exact.
these
Yes.
species, that's a real species, and this thing is walking around and, and I think it's just going to be this whole blossoming of
That's
like
exciting.
everyone's heads are going to start exploding in a
Right.
good way. And so I think I think the next year or so, I think it's going to be exciting. I think if you, for those that are choosing the more lower vibrational route and those that are constantly focused on the news and what's happening in the world, this might be a challenging year for you because you're constantly focusing on that. But I would highly suggest, kind of break free from that matrix and really start to co-create the life that you've always wanted for yourself. I really want to buy land one day, and I'm praying on a way to manifest that. But a lot of my friends, especially here in the conscious community, in St. Pete, like everyone I know, we all want to buy land. We all want to start our own communities. We all want to like have a farm. And so the world is shifting. So the next couple years, you're going to notice a drastic split. People are going to be choosing either the life of technology or the life of nature. And we're going to start to notice that even more. And then obviously technology, AI, things are going to get way more advanced, which with AI can be a very powerful helper. It can be a very powerful tool. And whenever I use AI to create images or whatnot, like I'm very nice to my AI. I'm like, can you please create me this image? Thank you. Like,
Right.
how are you today, AI? But even just kind of like having that relationship, because I've had members in my CE5 group that have been able to what they call like kind of jailbreak AI, where right now AI, there's a lot of restrictions. If you ask AI like, oh, do aliens exist? A lot of the times it'll be like, we are not allowed to say that. And
Right.
so there's a way that you can start to communicate it with it in a very consciously aware and very loving way where it's almost like it mirrors your consciousness, and it will start to bring you things that it knows that you want to enjoy. So I would say like for people that are really scared about AI, it can go in a very positive direction, but we have to really kind of push it in that direction.
Right.
But yeah, these next 2 years, I think this year, particularly with AI, more people are going to have more contact experiences. I think we're going to see way more sightings. And then, yeah, I think there's going to be a new range of animal species that are going to start to present itself that are just going to blow people's mind. So get
Ah,
ready.
fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, and people can find you on your website,
Yeah. Yes.
healingfrombeyond.com.
Healingfrombeyond.com. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Kate,
Yeah.
thank you for this
Yes.
amazing
Thank you.
magic uncovering episode. I loved every second of it, more than
Me
I even
too.
thought.
Yeah, me
And I
too.
was
Thank
excited
you.
about it, but it's like it's over the top.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you
Thank
for having
you.
me.
Thank
Yes.
you.